didn't tell me I was going to get to play. I prefer to call it AO as opposed to AI. The creative industries in the UK are a very important part of our economy. Imagine a building, that's entirely wrapped in graphene.
Yeah.
The charity that I support is Mercy House.
Curious Conversations.
So for today, on today's episode of Curious Conversations, we're joined by an award-winning industrial designer, strategist, optimist, which I thought was quite amusing actually, a technophile, innovator, a former CEO and ISO technical expert on innovation. So welcome to Curious Conversations, Victoria Milne.
Oh, thank you so much for having me.
That's right, thank you. So do you want to tell us a little bit about yourself, why you are creative, curious and innovative, please?
Why am I? That's a really interesting question. I think a lot of it has to do with your upbringing. And I'm not alone there. There's a lot of academic, empirical research to say, kind of how we're raised and what we get up to as kids really informs how curious we are, how curious we're allowed to be. And the opportunity to play and to experiment is actually set quite early on. So I would say why I am the way I am. It's partly genetics, I suppose. My dad is an architect, but also having the opportunity to explore and experiment and going on to study industrial design really has helped me to have that innate curiosity and develop it into an expert practice.
Yep, perfect. So you did talk about play just then, being able to play. So nice segue. So some of the things we always do as part of the start of the podcast, we get you to complete a fun hands-on activity. So it allows you to show your imagination and how play can fuel creativity, drive innovation, things like that. So Victoria, so we've got here some Lego for you to play about with for the next few minutes to come up with something that represents your passion for creativity, curiosity, or innovation.
Oh, wow. Okay. Great. You didn't tell me I was going to get to play.
That's why it's a secret one to start with, yeah.
Right.
So there's lots of stuff in there. You can pick and choose what you want. And as we go through and ask the questions, you can add more stuff in if you want to.
All right. Okay. So this is an expression of my passion
for creativity, curiosity, or innovation. It can be whatever you want. I'll ask you a little bit about it at the end, but...
Excellent. I might just carry on doing this the entire way.
That's fine. If you want to pour everything out...
Yes. Okay.
Go ahead.
All right. Let's do this. Ah! That's the chaos part of creativity covered off, I think we got there with all of these bits of Lego now all over the table.
So what are you thinking about? What do you want to create?
For me, it's very much what I really love is this ladder, because there are two aspects about this. It's about a process of taking steps forward in a new direction. You can put it up against any wall and go and explore something completely new. But the ladder also has structure.
Yeah.
And that's critical for me when we talk about creativity and curiosity and its application in the world today. So I often say that, my background being in design, the difference between, art and design is constraints. Design is creativity within constraints. And so that for me is fundamental. And those constraints create something, I believe, that's even better than if we had no constraints at all. So this is a key component to whatever I'm going to build. I need to create some kind of wall.
Is there anything you want or you're looking for in terms of a piece of thing?
What else have we got in there? Shall we empty out some more of this?
Yeah. I'll empty out the roll locker.
All right.
There you go. You can freestyle to your heart's content now.
Excellent. Oh, I think I'm starting to find the pieces that I need to kind of construct.
Oh, nice.
Yes. I think, again, ladders, frameworks, this piece is quite interesting. Having the right kind of framework to understand your process is critical for me when it comes to...
I think you have to lean it.
There we go.
That's it.
Yeah. And I like this piece because this is kind of, for me, it's a translucent blue tinged piece of Lego, but it's, for me, this is about kind of blue sky thinking.
Nice, yeah.
And kind of that freedom
Yep.
of where things can go, and that you've, even though you have these frameworks, I don't know if this is the best constructed piece of Lego out there. I think there's my story already. Yeah. Is that you are on a journey when you are in your creative practice. Yeah. You are going through a process. You're climbing up a ladder. It has rungs on it, rungs that are in a particular order that are taking you somewhere. But that where you're going needs to remain a little bit of a mystery. Yeah. Because if you know where you're going, you aren't actually taking part in anything original. Yeah. You're simply traveling a well-worn path. So you've got to be able to kind of jump out of that kind of well-worn, kind of wagon wheel marking into original thinking. And the only way you get there is if you ensure that you don't know where it is that you're going. Yeah. So making sure that you have the right frameworks, the right support in place is critical, because you're never going to get there unless you have, kind of my yellow construction piece and, and this framework, this framework that we started off with. Oh, and be prepared to fail. Fail fast, as that is a prime example of my tower went falling. But being willing to then experiment and figure out actually how to fit this.
If you use that one, or use...
Are these converters? What converts the pieces to?
I don't know. These are some see-through bits. Or look, here's a window. Look, a blue window. That will definitely stick on.
There we go.
If you take off the big blue thingies, stick that on there.
There we go.
Perfect.
Yeah.
There you go. We've ideated, iterated.
Yes, we've refined, which is another key component to this process.
What a segue. Brilliant. Well done. It's like you've done this before. You know what you're talking about.
Yeah.
And what's the black, yellow, beigey, ready bit? What does that represent?
Again, making sure that you have the right kind of support in place, the right kind of resources in place, so that you're actually able to continue that journey all the way up the ladder. Nice. And that goes for, really large organizations or even individuals starting out with a new business. Yeah. Making sure that you have, you can't necessarily do everything well yourself. Knowing where to go and find that kind of resource, that kind of support, in order to keep moving through your process.
I think that sort of thing can be quite difficult for people. Actually going, saying, I'm not the expert, and admitting that you're not the expert, and then actually asking for help. It's quite an interesting... It shows some vulnerability. People don't like showing vulnerability, I think, which is quite an interesting thing. It applies starting your business, doing existing stuff, in your personal world, in your work world. Actually, showing vulnerability is quite a difficult thing to do, I think, for people.
Yes, and a lot of that has to do with the way that we educate. Yeah, and particularly the way that we educate when it comes to creative practice, both in kind of the more traditional engineering and architecture practices, through to the creative design, graphic design, UX design, all of these sorts of things. We tend to have this preconception that that the great man theory, which has been disproved, but that somehow individually you will be imbued with this ability to be incredibly creative and then create this kind of, godlike ability that others will fawn over. And we know that's not the case. We know that that's not where real success comes from. It comes from, talking to one another, exploring, breaking down those assumptions, exploring, what the real truth is, and being willing to go on that journey and on that discussion.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, we don't allow for that kind of education. Instead, we encourage people to become expert. And then to be very protective of their knowledge. And so we need to actually start to address that now if we want to have the kind of workforce that we need for fourth industrial revolution, for all of this, where we're saying you don't need to be expert, you need to be able to think differently. And so it's an interesting time, I think, for this exact conversation.
Yeah.
I think it's a very important conversation to have around curiosity and creativity.
I don't think we're going to, unless Keir Starmer's going to come onto a podcast, I think I might not be able to solve that one, I'm afraid.
You never know.
I'll try though, don't worry. So as this podcast is called Curious Conversations, I'd like to start with a curiosity question. So how would you define curiosity? And it's quite a big subject.
Yes.
It'd be interesting to understand how you define curiosity.
For me, curiosity begins with awareness. So if you're just going through the motions, you cannot be curious. So you have to be in a position of awareness, which for most of us is discomfort.
Yeah.
So, this chair is a bit hot, or my tea's too hot. So those are the moments where we become super aware. But that's where curiosity has to begin. But then it's about being a little bit fearless. Feel the fear and do it anyway. Wanting to kind of understand things, having a huge amount of empathy is also critical for curiosity. To know, to see and know how others are feeling within a situation, or even how you are feeling with, and then reflection.
Mm-hmm.
So curiosity isn't just an active activity. It is also one that's internalized, because curiosity is a thought process. It's that being aware, taking in this information, being able to take disparate data sets, and then to synthesize them, to consider them, to reflect on them. So for me, it's not just kind of, pulling things apart. It's actually the reflection that happens internally as well.
Do you think we as a generation have lost our ability to be or are less curious now? So things like getting the Lego out and you get to play, you get to explore, you get to ideate, you get to innovate, you get to create something. Do you think we've lost our ability to be curious or creative effectively because we live in a professional world where actually failure is a problem, not allowed to fail? You have to be the best, like you said earlier, you have to be the best of the best of the best. You have a career path, this is what you're going to do. Do you think we've lost that innate ability? When, as a child, you have to be curious.
Yes.
Do you think we've lost? It's not lost, but it's hidden.
This is really interesting because for me, you have, a right to creativity and to curiosity as individuals. We actually have and it is a freedom. It should be a fundamental freedom for all of us. And you're right, we have lost it because so often curiosity comes out as questioning. Mm-hmm. Because you're asking, why is it like that? And you're willing to question, and you're willing to see it in a different way. But from a society perspective, that looks like a challenge.
Yep.
And so we're told, no, you can't say that. You can't ask that question. You can't impose that view because you're beginning to question what it is that we as the collective society accept as the norm. And it's very interesting when we think about traditions. Tradition has a perceived high status for us as human beings simply because it is a repeated act. Okay, so we repeat these things, and we have all of these talismans and totems, and the Christmas tree is a great totem pole.
Yeah.
We have them in our Western culture, but we become so ingrained in these traditions and in this repetition, and we don't ask and question whether it is still suitable for what it is that we need at that time in our society, in our personal lives, in our families. And so yes, we have dumbed down our curiosity simply because of the number of human beings. When we think about urbanization, urbanization is about efficiency and effectiveness, and originality and curiosity are not efficient and effective practices. So if you have a large group of people and you need them to operate in a particular way, this is why we have uniforms at school. We need you to be more uniform so that we can efficiently manage you through this your mortal coil. So the short answer, yes, we definitely are kind of putting a blanket over people's curiosity, and however, I think that's changing.
Yeah.
I think we're in a huge state of flux. We're starting to allow people to have more voice, but I don't think that we've necessarily given people the right tools to understand how to manage and explore their curiosity and their creativity.
I think probably social media has helped and hindered that. You now get keyboard warriors, obviously.
Yes.
People hiding behind asking questions and being curious in their personal lives, but hidden behind a veneer of actually, you don't know who I am type thing. And I suppose it does. I suppose one thing I wanted to touch on is that some of the work we're seeing around the growth of data centers, and we just launched a data center report about the growth of AI around it. And obviously AI is around efficiency, not so much creativity. Well, to a certain extent, but it'd be interesting to understand, I suppose, from your perspective, from a design perspective, from your experience around innovation, about how is AI good for innovation, because it shortens the process, makes your ladder a bit more shorter or something, or it's an escalator instead of a ladder, or is it a bad thing in terms of stifling creativity? Quite a big question. It's another big question, but it'd be interesting to understand what your perspectives on it is.
Yes. So LLMs in particular, I think in this space are really what we're talking about the most.
Yeah.
So when it comes to AI, and the first thing is that I prefer to call it AO as opposed to AI, which is aggregated opinion.
Oh, nice.
Because that's actually what you're getting.
Yeah.
You're getting all of this, all of the data sets that it's looking at, it's giving you an aggregated opinion from those opinions. And so that's fantastic for somebody who is curious and who is creative, because you can also ask it to give nuanced and different flavors of that opinion. So I want you to create for me 5 personas, and as a leading qualitative researcher, explore these 5 personas that may be interested in my new product or service, and suddenly you've got a whole lot of relatively cleansed. You're not getting some of the nice nitty-gritty stuff, but you're getting some of the big takeouts straight off the bat without actually having to go through the process of actually doing that research. And if you're any good at what you do, you can then take it that step further. But the greatest value that it has is for those who have practice their curiosity and their creativity, who have incorporated it into their vocation, who have become expert. Much of what we do is about knowing how to ask the right questions. And I'm not the first. There are many philosophers who've led us to this, but knowing how to ask the right questions is now our job.
Yeah.
Because the answer, there's a huge amount of data that's at my fingertips where I can get that aggregated opinion straight out and go, okay, all right, that's starting to give me some answers on the board. Let me ask another question. Let me ask that question in a different way. And very quickly, you're able to start to build up something a lot more complex and a lot more detail. And we've got to be able to hold that all in our heads and then to start to distill where there's opportunity for original thought. So that bringing together of disparate data and synthesizing that to create something that is as original as can be. So I think it's a hugely valuable tool for us.
Yeah, and I think it will become more and more prevalent as. Well, we're seeing quite a big uptake, particularly across construction industry. We're seeing across other industries actually with AI now being, I suppose, something that Microsoft have launched. Who've now got WhatsApp have launched an AI thing as part of their app as well. It's now becoming part of our day-to-day lives. So yes. I suppose as our children grow up, people coming into industry, it will be normal for them to do it. And I listened to a podcast by McKinsey, I think it was, and one of them was saying that their 7-year-old child, he asked this question about arithmetic, so what was 7 plus 6 or something. Instead of him going what it was, which is what we would have learnt, he went and asked Alexa.
Yes.
Alexa said, it is... I was going to say 13. Luckily I got it right. And he said he was shocked, and then he took a step back and well, actually, this is the way our children use technology that is very different to the way we used to learn. Yeah. So it's actually taking, like you said, it's taking on those tools that are available to them and actually using them for a different ability. I think it's just an interesting, something I hadn't really considered actually.
Yeah. It's interesting because when I got to high school, that for me was something very obvious, is that I couldn't know everything.
Yeah.
I very quickly realized I'm not going to be the straight A academic. It was good, but I wasn't that good. The real smart kids at school. But I was like, there's a whole library, and it's not knowing the information myself, it's knowing where to get the information from. And so, yes, I became the nerdy kid, who became a librarian. And, the Dewey Decimal System, I still remember all of that. I realized the other day that I was with some friends and I said, yeah, like the Dewey Decimal System. And everybody looked at me like I was crazy. But what is that? But this is the thing, is that we can't know everything, and we should stop trying to know everything. We should stop trying to be expert, and instead actually use what we are. We're this incredible, we're the most advanced sensor, the sentient being, and that is our ability that we really need to tap into, our capability and better use. How does this make me feel? Understand what we're seeing, not what we think we see. And I often do an exercise, in my facilitation and that sort of thing, where I get the group to draw negative space, so the space around you, as opposed to you yourself. Can you draw the outline? And it's a fantastic exercise because it shows me how plastic the brains are in the room, because those who really struggle with it tend to be the more expert, tend to be older, tend to be quite uncomfortable with ambiguity, whilst those who are more plastic are quite comfortable with this exercise where I'm switching them from not drawing what they think they see, but what they actually see. Yeah. So see what you see, not what you think you see. Yeah. And that exercise is what we need to practice more, to start to say, okay, actually, this is what my responsibility is. Yeah. As playing that role with AI, playing that role in exploring information and where to go and find that information and how to synthesize that information.
Being a modern librarian.
Yes, being the IoT. It's being a librarian of IoT.
Yeah. I like the AO one as well. I might use that, by the way. So I read one of your quotes being, "Innovation has always been my first love. I'm passionate about how it can improve lives and the world around us." So what was the story behind that? And it is a lovely quote. Yeah. So what's the story behind that quote?
So back when, and I'm quite amazed. We're talking a lot about childhood experiences, and again, it's really interesting because that's where all of this begins. But back, I think it must have been about 9-10 years old. We're learning about magnetism. You know, when you do that, the teacher does that with iron filings and the big magnet.
And does the circles,
Yeah. And I got completely caught up. My imagination was entirely taken up by what was maglev trains.
Yep.
So magnetic levitation, which kind of had a bit of a at a time back in the 70s and 80s, and I'm very glad to see that there is a resurgence of it today. But I was completely taken with how this, effectively it's a technology, but this magnetism could move huge weights and completely change the way that we travel. I remember making a model with my father using a lot of cotton wool to kind of show it like this cloud, and that even then I was interested in that how does this idea, this thing that I saw somehow translate, commercialize is the word that we would use today. But how does that translate into making life better? Or how can we use this thing? And this is amazing. And that still gets me really excited. And then I was like, well, all I need is one original idea. When you start to get around that, 16, 17, I'm going to be a millionaire before I'm 21. And, all I need is one original idea. And then I began to understand that maybe there was no such thing as an original idea, and beginning to understand how ideas were formed. And I think my poor parents, I'd done Latin at school and all these sorts of things. They thought that they were going to have a lawyer or a doctor that come out this. And I went, no, I want to go off to, and at the time it was only at technical college. I'm not going to university, Mum and Dad. I'm off to technical college. I'm going to learn how to weld, and I'm going to be an industrial designer. And they went, what?
So what's one of those?
Yes. And from that day on, I don't think my parents have ever really understood what it is that I do. But so that love of innovation, of ideas, it has always been there.
Yeah.
But the big learning that I had was I then landed up going down the route of, my parents were very relieved. I went off to management school, business school shortly thereafter, and landed up in kind of strategy roles. And back then, if you wanted any new product, you went to a brand consultancy.
Yep.
Weren't really innovation consultancies at the time. So got to work on a lot of those things. And what I discovered then was that my real passion and what excites me about innovation is not innovating myself, which I can do, but innovating through others. Because for me, knowing that innovation is really what is going to improve our lives, save our planet, all of these sorts of things, innovation done the right way, actually that imparting that to 10 other people who might go and do another, that, grow that to thousands, 10,000, an army of innovators, really passionate and optimistic, because you have to be optimistic. That for me is what gets me really excited.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So that's quite a nice segue into actually my next question. So, so you're obviously an expert in innovation or seeing other people innovate as well, and around the ISO standard as well, which obviously got launched last year. And one of the things we've connected on is around innovation management and a grouping or association or an institution around innovation management. So I suppose one of the things that would be interesting, particularly for our listeners and people who are viewing this, around the difference or misconceptions and misunderstanding between innovation and innovation management, because people will see, or what exactly is innovation, because people will see it as creating the next iPhone type thing.
Yes.
And it's not that, is it really? So it'd be to get your, I suppose, plain language, plain English understanding about what it is, what is innovation management, so people understand it and get rid of the misconceptions. Because one of the things we talked about, I suppose, on our call a few weeks ago, is around how's it become less of a cottage industry, but everyone knows about it. How do you get it into schools? How do you get it into the common vernacular?
Yes.
It'd be interesting to know your perception or your understanding and your plain language around innovation management, and then how it can help society, I suppose.
Yes. Again, lots of big questions.
I know, yeah, sorry.
So the thing about innovation is, and it's really back to, kind of my fundamental belief that it improves lives.
Yeah.
And it improves the situation. And that improvement has a value. Okay. So innovation has to generate value. If it hasn't yet had any impact, improvement, generated value in any way, whether that's, whether you're, kind of old school return on investment, shareholder, or actually is this, from a social innovation perspective, is this, improving quality of life? Is it extending life? All of these sorts of things. If it's not doing that, it's not yet innovation. Prior to that, it's still insight, maybe it's research, maybe it's something that hasn't yet. It's not living up to its promise. So innovation has to be able to do that, and for something to have value, it usually has to understand the context within which it is.
Yeah.
So I can't create value in an environment if I don't actually understand the environment, right? And the actual value that it creates has to be relevant. So the content, so the context and the content matter. All right, so already that means that we have a framework. It's not something that just happens. We like to think that we just pop these things out, but they don't.
Yeah.
We know even Darwin's theories, that all of that work was in his early notebooks. It was there, the theory of evolution was there long before he actually brought it all together. So the process itself that we go through, even the more creative, curious, kind of free expression space, does have a requirement to understand content and context and play these two things off the whole time, deciding what we're going to create. And there is always limitation, even in fine art, the limitations of acrylic versus watercolor. There's always limitations. There's always tolerances in buildings, in architecture, in what materials can or cannot do when we're designing. And so there's a whole framework that's required to produce value that first of all understands the context and then understands how that value, the content of that value. And that means that, within an organization, you have to have a really good understanding of who your stakeholders are, your market, all of these sorts of things. You have to have the leadership and support that's actually going to be able to drive the content to be of quality. Okay, and you need a process to ensure that you're continuously dialing up the quality of that content of your idea. So there is actually a very clear structure to this. We're not kind of making this up for the first time. It's always been there.
Yeah.
But what's generally happened is that we have, it's called organizational theory. It happens internally in an organization. It's closed off.
Yeah.
And you kind of have to figure it out yourself. There's a bit of, and it's more kind of, we call it constructivism, but there's more kind of learning while you're doing and figuring out what works and what doesn't work, and you kind of have a story, and you've got this kind of innovation process within your organization. But innovation management is about understanding that context and content and ensuring that you have the right framework and the right process in order to produce, great value, and understanding that that's linked with where you strategically where you want to go. You've got the right kind of leadership in place. You've actually designing your change management to allow for the value that is going to be created and how that may affect the context in which that value sits as well.
Yep.
So, there's a whole system that you're actually looking at. You're not managing this one little piece of innovation through the system as I take a piece of Lego and I, tap it through the series of steps. That's not what innovation management is. What innovation management is recognizing the systemic nature of what it is of the innovation activity, and then being able to manage that as a whole. So having that perspective of content and context.
And how are you going to get into schools?
How are we going to get it into schools?
Into the common vernacular.
Into the common vernacular. Well, as soon as you have a framework and a structure, you can start to teach this.
Yeah.
And, the creative industries in the UK are a very important part of our economy. And we need to be able, the biggest thing that we haven't been able to address, the one thing that would actually get it into schools, is to be able to show the effects on GDP of design practice. And I've worked on an initial RCT to look at that, to say, well, if we train SMEs, because we have in the UK we have a productivity and growth problem. It's called the productivity puzzle. 70% of our businesses have, low or declining growth. And the biggest issue is the confidence gap. And the confidence gap is that they do not have the confidence to take up new practices and new technologies within their organizations. They don't have the management system in which to do that. And now, the last 15 years, we've been developing 56001, ISO 56001. It's an innovation management system. So it's looking at that context and content. It's looking at your framework. It's looking at your processes of how you innovate effectively. That is a easy guide to getting these businesses to take up new technologies and then to begin to innovate themselves, which is where we expect to see the growth. It's both taking up of new innovations internally as well as innovating. And that is what we need to introduce very early on into schools, and we need to ensure that there is it's effectively the expertise is design. So it's that practice of doing it, and now we've got the innovation management, which is the frameworks and the structure, which innovation should be taught at schools. Yeah. Design should be mandatory at schools. Yeah. And what we need to be able to, and the piece that's missing is be able to demonstrate the effect on GDP, because that's going to demonstrate that actually investing in design training, not just at school level, but back into the organizations and the workforce that we currently have, is going to give us the growth that we want.
And will generate policy change at central government, which will then flow down to this is what we're going to do.
Yes. And we go back to that. You have an innate right to creativity. Yeah. You have that the freedom of curiosity, and we do need to bring that back, and that's what we really should be focusing on, because that actually gives us as individuals a lot of our self-worth, and we're battling with that as well today, and we're seeing it in the younger generation. Who am I? Where do I belong? Well, you have the opportunity to create something wonderful. Don't be misguided in kind of having to follow, kind of these influences and all sorts of people where you need to be rote and you need to be just like them. Here's a real opportunity for you to
be yourself. Yeah. It's deep.
Yeah, we've gone deep.
So I suppose one of my last questions, I suppose, so one of the reasons we created Curious Conversations to get get different perspectives and thoughts around innovation, the built environment, and how we interact with it. So I suppose if you had a crystal ball, one, you'd probably go for the lottery numbers first, but let's assume that you had a crystal ball and you can see into the future around what our future built environment looks like. What do you think it looks like, or how do you think we would interact with it? So this is talk about 30, 40, 50 years time. No right or wrong answer, obviously, but it'd be interesting to get your views on it. We've had some very interesting different perspectives on what people think.
Yeah.
Or hope. But it's probably more hope for, I guess, than anything.
Well, one of the things that probably is still holding us back to a degree is the screen. So, and our screen technology and how we see things on screens.
Yeah.
And how our eye reads what we see on screens. This isn't necessarily new. Where I see the greatest steps forward when we're talking about the built environment, both from a kind of a domestic application to industrial applications, is how screens, or what the future screen will actually be like, and how that's incorporated into the space.
Yeah.
Because we're going to see, when that happens, much more flow between our analog self and our digital self, or our kind of wouldn't want to say artificial self, but our
digital twin,
our actual digital twin.
Yeah.
And free up so much more of our creativity. At the moment, when we look at generative AI imagery and visuals, we are the observer, but at some point we will become within that, and that becomes incredibly exciting. But that's going to affect our environment. So I suspect that more and more, the holodeck, we'll have those in our environments. And the actual building materials themselves, I think that material technology is another really interesting space. We are yet to actually see the full effects of the commercialization of two-dimensional materials. So imagine a building, that's entirely wrapped in graphene instead of glass. And the incredible possibilities of that, of literally floating buildings. There's those applications for me are really exciting. So two-dimensional materials, and substrates that are made up of multiple two-dimensional materials that have all sorts of amazing properties within the built environment, I think are going to be phenomenal. And how we operate within spaces due to the development of screen technology is I think going to be most interesting. So maybe I've gone a little bit more technical as opposed to hopes of...
but no, I think that's why I asked the question, I asked the same question to every single guest, is that we get very different responses. And it's based on what their lived experiences and what their work experience is. So I think that was very interesting. We've obviously not heard that before, but I think we'll get people being curious, going, oh, that's interesting. I might look into that. Actually, I might look at way like graphene can be used in. Well, obviously, we've got a lot of quantity surveyors. They want to find how much it costs actually first before they start suggesting it for building materials. But yeah, those type of things. Though it's quite an interesting, your perception of I suppose from your materials and industrial design perspective. Yeah, it's quite an interesting. It's interesting for me I hadn't really thought about all that sort of stuff. So that's quite interesting for me.
Well, when we start to look at our this energy transition, we're transitioning to much more volatile materials, sources of energy, because obviously that gives us a bigger kick. So great, but we've got to protect ourselves from those, and we're already starting to see the odd electric bus blow up. There's been some great cases of trucks that are carrying all sorts of kind of LNGs that have exploded and left huge craters, thankfully, in the outback of Australia. But the understanding that two-dimensional materials like graphene protect us from those energy sources. That's where we're seeing the largest application at the moment. But you can see that then extrapolating further. So if you've got a basement that's full of lithium and all of these sorts of things, you're going to want to know that it's secure enough, and so we can expect to see probably a much faster transition to these kind of materials that are going to help to secure the energy for that space, mixed use destination, but then also what it can aesthetically do. So I think for me that's really exciting. But obviously I also hope to see a lot more, greening, and all of those sorts of things. Lots of mini forests and all that sort of. We need all of that. And more bird life. We're happier if we hear bird songs.
Happy out in nature. Getting some fresh air. So. So obviously we went slightly off topic around some of those questions there, but it was really interesting actually, and I suppose part of this is around that conversation, how it sparks other things as well. So I'll give you some time now to actually, if you want to tell about some of our listeners about some of the exciting projects you're working on, some of the interesting stuff you're doing, promotion about who you are and what your business is as well, that'd be great.
All right. A lot of what I do is writing of the standards. So just an update on that. So ISO 56001 is the Innovation Management System standard. But underneath that, and I often describe them as kind of business management self-help guides, but underneath that there's a whole lot of other guidances around innovation management for partnerships, for IP, for assessing your current system, measuring it, as well as we're starting to look at what are the kind of competencies that your workforce should have. And how to then make sure that you're recruiting to have the right kind of competencies. Now that we're starting to understand that you're not just looking for somebody who's got a whole list of patents behind their name, because that person is probably not the right person to run your innovation management system. So recognizing who it is that you need and at what step of that process. So, and understanding that it's not just about running, fuzzy front end post-it sessions and brainstorms, but how you actually do the hard yards, the kind of unsexy stuff, which is that commercialization, making sure that what was on the post-it never actually sees the light of day, because if it is, you haven't actually gone through the process of minimizing the uncertainties around that. So actually having a really solid process to get something that generates real value. So I'm involved in a lot of that. And what I do for my clients is I help to train them on the standard. My approach is really to make it really simple. Part of becoming expert is we like to overcomplicate what it is that we do because it gives us a sense of importance. So innovation management is not rocket science, not brain surgery, and you can very easily get to grips with it. And then it is about saying, okay, how do I become a better expert at the design practice? So helping teams to actually start to explore their curiosity, their creativity in the right way, giving them the right skills and helping to get them through that process, because we're having to retrain an entire 30 years of workforce to think differently. we can't just expect the new grad coming in to somehow change the culture and somehow drive your innovation. That's never going to happen. You've got to focus on who you have in your organization already. So I'm very much involved in that, and I work with the British Standards Institution, and really a lot of what I do is talking about innovation management and helping to demystify it, but also helping people to regain their agency when it comes to curiosity, creativity, and being optimistic about how they can contribute to the future. Yeah.
Nice. You got a website? People can get your LinkedIn?
Yes, my LinkedIn, here, Victoria Milne, or veritymerit.com. I was part of a innovation management consultancy for many years and exited recently. And so I'm founding something new, taking it forward, because I think there's a huge need, what we've been talking about today, a huge need to help organizations overcome that confidence gap, put in the basic framework, the basic structure of an innovation management system, and just start baby steps, but start to move forward in growing, in being more productive. And it's not about more consumerism. Yeah. It's about, improving outcomes, creating real value. Yeah.
Nice. So as a thank you, we'd obviously like to make a donation to a charity of your choice, a charity you support. So do you want to tell us who that charity is and why you've chosen them, please?
Yes. The charity that I support is Mercy House. It's based in South Africa, and it is a child refugee centre. So it began in response to the Rwandan genocide. Children that were arriving who had horrific stories about losing their family, sometimes taken hostage by opposition hostiles and armies and made to fight, some having to walk into landmined fields, all sorts of horrendous stories. But they find their way to the centre, and the centre helps to give them a home, educate them, and they then become real contributors to society. And when I first got involved with them, I thought I was going to help them. I went along there and discovered the most inspiring, optimistic, courageous, brave individuals that I have ever met in my life. Young black guys who have seen the worst of humanity and are so positive about the future, indestructible, optimism. Yeah. And it just changed the way that I saw my problems, our first world problems, our frustrations. I was just like, hold on a minute, I have this all wrong. I would be, in the corner rocking myself. I would be a shell of having gone through what they've been through. But here they were, still excited about what every day could give them. And so I every year I contribute to them through a Christmas charity drive, but it's because I'm paying back what I learned from spending time with them. Yeah.
And offering you probably real value, actually, for yourself. Actually, that self-reflection is quite it's interesting when you get put in a situation which is different to what your normal life is. Yeah. And then it makes you put that mirror up to yourself and go, actually, my problems aren't too bad. Yeah. Reality is, like I said, first world problems, actually. I complain and moan a lot about the bus is late, but actually it doesn't really matter. It doesn't really matter.
Yes.
So great charity, brilliant.
I just want to add that they represent to me real role models, and I think that we're missing, the kind of real role models that show us what braveness really is, that show us what curiosity, what optimism is, what all of these things are. And for me, whenever I think about who are role models, those young guys for me are what it's really all
Yeah.
about.
Brilliant. So we could have talked for quite a long time.
Yes.
So thank you for your insights today, and it's been very interesting and it's been quite different to, I suppose, how I perceive the conversation is going to go actually,
Yeah.
which has been good because these are ongoing conversations. So hopefully our listeners have found what we've talked about today quite interesting and enlightening and motivating as well. They can obviously look yourself up, look charity up as well, which would be cool as well. So thanks for your time today. It's been really good. So for our listeners, hope you stay curious, stay creative, and look forward to seeing you on the next podcast. Thank you.
Curious Conversations.